Last year, the entertainment industry faced calamitous strikes, the likes of which we are still facing effects every single day. Content not on the way, not at the same kind of rapidity that most have expected. Theaters bereft of many films. Now, folks, we're here to tell you that there's news when it comes to a potential additional strike that could cripple and paralyze the entertainment industry once more. We'll tell you the details you'll hear very few other places right now. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Pro Channel, where we endeavor to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve, and today is going to be one of those deep-level explanations. Get out your notes, folks. No tuition required, but you're going to come out of this one with a PhD in understanding what is happening with movies and TV. Joining us to help make that possible is the Professor Emeritus of all things entertainment, Dr. Mr. Ghost. Welcome back, sir.
Well, thank you. And, I hope it's a PhD of the good kind. Sometimes when dealing with Hollywood, it's an Elmer Fed.
No gender studies doctorate in this video today.
Oh, besides, they chiseled the Wascoey Wabbit off the front of the Tiana boats, right? So that won't work anymore.
No, they sunk that to the bottom. Maybe that's what's causing Tianas to not function. Maybe Brer Bear statues are all in the filter. Who knows? But
there you go.
There's a problem with the filters of Hollywood. They are getting gummed up in the works over and over, and this year has been no different. The studio's back, trying to negotiate a way to continue to do movies and TV and productions and all of that sort of thing. We've got an article out of Deadline, folks. As we dive in, click the like button. Help YouTube know this is the place to be. Dominic Patton, Patrick Hypes are the authors of this. No IATSE strike. IA this summer as union and studios reach tentative deal on area standards agreement. Now, what's important to look at here, folks, is there's no strike this summer. Pay attention to that. That's going to be important. IATSE and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers said Thursday that they have reached a tentative agreement on all issues for the Area Standards Agreement, the companion contract to the basic agreement that got its own tentative deal Tuesday night. The latest agreement between the union and reps for the studios and streamers means that pending ratification, there will be no IATSE strike coming this summer. Members and signatories will have the opportunity to review the agreement in the form of a detailed summary in the days to come, followed by a memorandum of agreement at a later date, the two sides said together. It goes on to talk about IATSE, but I would rather turn it over to someone who knows more about this than the people writing this, I would presume and assume and believe strongly. Lou, walk us through what is IATSE? How close was this to a catastrophe? And is catastrophe still looming? Is it still waiting at the heels of Hollywood?
Okay, let's get the basics out of the way first. IATSE, as they pronounce it, which is the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, is the union of everybody else, by which I mean not the directors, not the writers, not the actors, okay? It's the stagehands, as it indeed began in the days of vaudeville and New York stage, and then expanded into the movies as they came along. And it now also covers, by the way, all those guys at convention centers and hotel facilities that do stagehandy kind of work, or lighting or sound or anything like that. Craft service, the guys that bring the donuts, they're part of this, okay?
Lobsters over at the Acolyte, because that budget's being kept in check.
There you go. So the way these things work, in order not to have a complete and utter shutdown of everybody out at once, is that they're on a 3-year contract, and each of the 3-year sequences happens one after the other. So you've got the writers 1 year, and the directors and the actors and the IA people. Well, the other two had their little drama where we all stood around and waited and waited and waited. But of course, when any one of them goes out, the others are de facto out, even though they're not technically on strike, because there's no work. And these people have just suffered through that entire, 6 months of that other thing, and their contract came up. So normally, when contracts are negotiated in the past 10 or 15 years anyway, they don't wait to the bitter end of, hey, it's going to expire next Tuesday, we better sit down and talk. They do what's called early negotiations. And the reason for that is that as the contract date gets closer, people don't even want to start something new, because the worst thing is to get caught in the middle with half a movie done. That costs big money, especially because some of the stars are on contract from the day they start to the day it's over, whether there's a 6-month break in the middle or not. So to avoid that, All the unions and all the producers have agreed to do early negotiations. When they say early, they mean 4 to 6 months before the expiration. And in return for agreeing to do it early, they take the 40, 50 things they'd like to negotiate over and narrow it down to 4, 5, 6. That's what happened with all the others, and they still couldn't come to a deal, and they went to a strike. Well, with this, they announced up front that if they did not reach an agreement by this day, they were not interested in doing it the usual way, which is, hey, but we're still talking, we're kind of close. How about we keep working anyway under the old deal, and when we get a new deal, we'll retroactively up all the money and everything else that was in the new deal to make it work from the previous start date instead of from when we finally get to it. They said, no way. We're not interested in extending. We're not interested in continuing. If you don't make a deal by the day, we're gone, we're out, and we're into a strike. Well, that seems to have concentrated people's attention a little more completely. And although all of this was still up in the air last week, now IATSE, which is a group of 15 or so unions, and both their what's called basic agreement, which covers the whole world of their extension of their authority, which is U.S. and Canada primarily, and what they call these area standards agreements. That's because in individual parts of the country and in individual types of work, there are unique conditions that require their own contract separate from the general one that everybody, including the area standards people, get. So a couple of days ago, they made a deal on the total contract. Now they're saying the area standards is done too. There's only one fly in this ointment. There's still one contract being negotiated, and that is the Teamsters union for the movies. And obviously, if the Teamsters don't drive the truck out there, you're not making a movie. So that one is still up in the air, and we shall see what happens with it. But meanwhile, the others have reached an agreement, but it's not a done deal. Once you have this agreement, when they talked about memorandum of I forget the legal term they use, they put out a thing that goes to everybody. They have meetings, they have online informational seminars, and then they set a date and everybody votes. And only if the majority of the membership actually approves of it does it then become the new contract. So that's where we're at right now. And while this is a pretty good deal on all things considered, it does not come without a history. And the history is that the last time they made a deal 3 years ago, it barely got through, and a lot of people thought it was a bad deal. And so this time they're being extra vociferous in their objections. And there are some to this deal, and we could go through the deal briefly and take a look at what it covers.
Lou, before we go through the details, though, there's sort of the macro and the micro of all this.
Right.
And the macro, I think, is just as important to understand what's been going on, why there have been these repeated strikes in Hollywood, what is causing such disruption over and over. And it seems to me that you were talking before we got started, sort of as we were prepping for this video, and you brought a quote to my mind.
Yes.
In regards to there's at least a shaky ground business model that has overtaken the entire entertainment industry, and it seems to be having a negative impact, I would say, on everything going on in the entertainment industry, because there's a lot of questions about why have we jettisoned the way that we make money, and when are we going to go back to making said money again? Can you walk us through that quote in particular?
It's in a way, it's similar to how every problem in our government and in our society is still being blamed on COVID. And so the point is that the strikes have been blamed for how come Hollywood is losing and how come Hollywood doesn't want to make a deal because things have changed. And maybe it has nothing to do with all this. Maybe it has to do with the business model. Here's a quote from a Marta Every, a member of the Motion Picture Editors Guild, which is one of the guilds in IA. And she says, I think there's bigger things at play than whether IA is going on strike. There's bigger issues with their business model and the cost of borrowing money that have nothing to do with IA and whether we were going on strike. They've been using that as a cover and an excuse. So the question is, look, because this was part of an article about, well, now that they made a deal, does that mean we're going to go back to work? Because work has been scarce even since the other deal. And they've been blaming it on, well, we haven't made a deal with the IA yet. She's saying, Maybe you haven't made a deal with the IA, but that's not your problem. Your problem is money. And your problem is that this switching of how you make money and depending so much on things like Disney Plus and streaming that may not pay off when you're spending major motion picture prices to make these deals, to make these shows. So all of that's still out there. And this may mean we don't have that excuse to not work anymore, but it doesn't mean you're suddenly going to start 50 shows tomorrow when the deal makes its deal. So is this important? You bet. The business can't work without a deal with these people. But
correct. And go ahead.
Well, but it's not the only problem. And they've been using this as an excuse for quite a while, and to some degree accurately. But this excuse is about to go away, which will focus a lot more attention on those issues of money and business model.
All right, let's take a look at this next article out of Variety. You say IATSE appropriately. I say Yahtzee because it's fun. Reaches deal on area standards agreement. This is by Gene Madhouse. It says IATSE has reached a tentative deal on the area standards agreement, the contract that covers 20,000 film and TV workers around the country, including those in Louisiana, New Mexico, and Georgia. The deal follows the basic agreement, which applies to 13 locals based in Los Angeles, which was concluded on Tuesday. Both contracts must now be ratified by the membership. The contracts are broadly similar, though minimum rates are lower in the area standards agreement. The agreement covers 23 IATSE locals whose jurisdiction applies everywhere in the U.S. except for L.A., San Fran, Chicago, and New York. IATSE got a 7% increase in the first year of both contracts, followed by increases of 4% and 3.5%. The ASA also includes additional regional wage adjustments, the union said, as well as a 33% increase.
Let's start there. The traditional standard of all these contracts, whether it's Directors Guild or actors or any, has always been a 3-year contract with roughly 3% a year each year going up. So the fact that they started with a big 7% in the first year is a big deal. And it is, what can we say? A bribe to accept a lot of the rest of it. But it is unusual that we must say that. 7, 4, 3.5 is unusual. Okay. And the reason these area agreements vary is because if you'll notice, when you read that list of the states that they're in, surprise, they're the ones with the please come make a movie in our state incentives to the producers.
Yes. And it's transformed Atlanta. Georgia in particular, I think, is most impacted by this. New Mexico has a very well, I don't want to be negative towards New Mexico or those who live there. Its economy is not great, and so of course it'll take any kind of production it can get. But I think a lot about just how many movies have that made in Georgia tag.
Well, and by the way, the proof of that is one of my many guilds, the one I was an officer of, the Directors Guild, has annual meetings and regular monthly and local meetings in New York and LA. Recently, in the past few years, they have a meeting once a year in Atlanta. That shows there are enough people permanently based there. In other words, when these incentive deals started, it was, we'll fly in and do the movie there and then go back home to LA or New York. Now, people are there. Businesses are providing services, prop houses, extra people. We had that story about the Stallone show where they supposedly offended some extras. In other words, there's a mini Hollywood establishment in these places, not just a once in a while. And that means they've built sound stages and they've set up business. So they're important. They're a big part of the business now.
So let me show you this, Lou. This stuck out to me as one of the big deals. And it might not seem like a big deal at first, but it says both contracts also include triple time pay once a workday reaches 15 hours. The union also got additional streaming residuals to help cover a $670 million shortfall in the pension and health plans. Yeah,
that's another big thing. The reason for that is, let's talk about the pension thing first, but then the 15 hours, because there's more to that. I don't know how many people listening to this have a pension or a health plan where they work, but if you do, you have to be what's called vested in it. You have to work a certain number or do a certain amount of money to be entitled to the benefits. Well, every other pension plan I've ever heard of works that way. You vest based on the money earned. But the IA has an unusual situation, not for them, but for everybody else, which is it's not the amount of money. It's the hours, literally the number of hours you worked in a given quarter or year or series of years, say whether you get the goodies or you don't. Well, back in the good old days of regular television, if you got a job on a regular series and that series had 23, 24, 26 episodes, had however many hours per episode your job was required for, you could count on getting pretty close to the vesting thing. And not entirely, but you would have guys who were dolly grips or boom operators who would say, well, I got this series, and assuming it doesn't get canceled mid-season, I'm good if I can get a pilot or two or a couple of commercials or something like that to make my quota. Well, what happens when the TV series of the day, meaning all these streaming series, is 10 episodes or 8 episodes? Well, regardless of the fact that the budgets are huge, the number of hours we need you as a dolly grip doesn't change much. And that means you suddenly need 2 or 3 of those to make your quota, or find another couple of pilots, or get a feature, or, and fewer people are qualifying. Well, that's bad. That's to be addressed. But meanwhile, when the whole town goes on strike for 6 months, you sure as heck are not going to make it. And what happens when suddenly the health plan that you've been counting on to pay for your daughter who has a disease that requires expensive drugs goes away? Well, so what they did during this strike, because everybody, when the other strike started, knew it was angry and knew it was tough, but they basically said, oh, but they'll come to a deal. Oh, but they'll come to a deal. So I tell you what, for the nonce, while it's going on, we'll carry people anyway, even if they don't make the minimum anymore. And then it went to 6 months. And the net is that the pension plan for the IA is something like $670 million in the hole, because they kept paying the benefits without the money coming in, because the money comes in as a percentage of what you're making. A little bit of yours goes to the pension plan, and a little bit from the producers goes to the pension plan, and it all adds up. So they now have to fill that hole, because aside from the fact that they're in the hole that much money on general principles, there are federal regulations about how well or how poorly a pension plan can be funded before the government comes in and takes it over. And, they don't get an answer of, well, we thought we'd do a favor to the guys. That doesn't wash. So apparently what they've decided to do is add additional payments only on the employer side, not the employee side, that'll help fill in that gap, and new residuals on streaming. That's a big deal, because once that $670 million or whatever is filled in, these things don't go away. So that means they've seriously improved the pension plan long term and the health plan. So that's a very, very good thing for the employees. And that's an added cost that is there from now until somebody negotiates it away on everything that gets made from here on in. And everything that streams is going to have to figure on that added cost of paying that streaming residual. Okay.
So as we talk about the triple time pay that kicks in at 15 hours.
Oh yeah, well, the obvious question is 15 hours. My God, that's a long day. Well, yeah, sure. It is, and it happens a lot. And so they've upped the money for doing it, but that doesn't change the fact that if you do 15-hour days, how tired do you get? How exhausted do you get? All the money in the world, at a certain point, people say, I want to go home now. And there have been cases of people working very, very long days, 17, 18-hour days, that people have had car crashes and died on the way home. So there's more to this than just money. The other issue is, and it doesn't mention it in this summary, but I've read some other things, and I'll wait till they put the official word out for the exact numbers. We have what's called turnaround. Turnaround means after you've worked those 10, 12, 15, 20 hours, how soon can they call you back? And usually it's the same length as the day. So if I decide to go 15, 16, 17 hours, the good news is for those hours beyond that, you're getting triple time. Swell. The bad news is you can't come back again to earn some more plain old time until that many hours have expired. So, and then this on-call classification, double time on the 7th day of the work week. By the way, 7 as in all the days of the work week. Once upon a time, just like everybody else in the world, people in this business got Saturdays and Sundays off or were paid extra for it. Now, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is. You work until there's no work. So, and also it says increases on non-dramatic under the videotape. In other words, it's not just for shows that are on a script. It's for guys in sports or weather or anything else. It's award shows, you name it. So this is a pretty damn big get. All of these monetary terms are really, really good. The question becomes, where's the catch?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It looks like a win yet again for the
It
unions.
is a win, and there are people who are already agitating against it, saying it's not enough of a win to make up for all the stuff we went through over the past 10 years. Well, they're just gripers. But this thing about AI, which everybody considers to be
How
the
did you
big
know
issue,
I was going to ask about that?
because it was the only one left. You see this thing, it says the tentative deal includes new protections around artificial intelligence, including language that ensures that no employee is required to provide AI prompts in any manner that will result in the displacement of any covered employee. Well, who decides?
Right. That's subjective.
The answer is, if you're the guy on the set who says, well, wait a minute, I can't do that because it's liable to displace an employee someday. And they say, no, it's not. And you say, yes, it is. What this says is you don't have to work if you think that's happening.
Here's what I think, Lou.
And if you'd like to never work again, you go ahead and stand up for it, by God.
I think it means that the creatives outside of this ecosystem who do use AI are going to have a massive advantage. And whereas the institutional power in the studios and all of the infrastructure is a massive advantage, an unscalable advantage for Hollywood and for the studios themselves, this AI thing is going to shift power dramatically in the next couple of years. And I think it's going to position YouTube very well, because YouTube, its creators, its independent creators in the garages all over the country and all over the world, they're not beholden to this AI regulation. And I want to circle this into next year. Now, I haven't told you that we would talk about this, and you're free to say, well, Pro, that's a video for another day. But if I'm understanding you correctly, next year we go right back into negotiations with the writers. Is that right?
Yeah.
So then, Lou, seems to me that AI is going to be at the very forefront of all of these upcoming issues.
Sure it will.
And we may have more standoffs.
With respect, I think you're missing the point.
Please.
Point here is that who gets to decide whether you're right or wrong if you stand up for this?
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. It's going to lock it down, because you're exactly right.
It's not going to lock anything down is the point. They're going to be totally free to say, you think that? Great. Nice to know you.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so where I was coming from, Lou, is thinking that every worker.
There's no.
I thought every worker was going to lock elbows like it's Red Rover, and say, no, none of us are going to do anything with AI because it might displace somebody. And by golly, if one of my buddies does it, then I'll tell on him and we'll all hate his guts for doing it. That's what I was thinking.
But somebody will take the job.
I see.
Because there is no independent tribunal or committee or
there's no arbitration here.
Not in this deal.
Oh,
it says if you feel that way, by God, you take a stand, and you aren't forced to work anyway. Which you really
get messy. That's what that's going to be.
You see, grief. That's the issue. The issue is who decides, and the answer in this deal, you get to decide. Isn't that great? Yeah, I get to decide to commit career suicide.
Right. You get to decide with no defense, ready to go for you.
Well, I mean, we have these arbitrations on every issue of these contracts. But this one doesn't call for arbitration, as far as I understand it. I have not seen the deal, and maybe I'm wrong. But this is what people in the union are already complaining about: is the very you gave us a right we can exercise if we want to commit suicide.
Lou, we should have shut up earlier. We should have ended this video. We've given everybody an extra bonus that could have been its own topic and probably will be. That I had no idea. You're telling me that. Yes. But you know what, folks? We're going to leave it in. We're going to keep this as a single conversation, and we'll come back and talk about this more because this is amazing.
Well, so it's a mostly good news, a little bad news, and let's see what the Teamsters do.
That's right.
And of course, the Teamsters. I don't think AI, unless it's maybe something Musk is creating, is going to drive a truck.
No, I'm not up for
So they
I want a human somewhere in the vehicle.
They care about money, baby.
They
care about money and hours and turnaround. And and that's another thing. I want you to remember something. If these people are getting a deal after 15, the theory is they're getting rewarded when that rarely happens, but maybe it won't happen so often because people don't want to pay the money. Do you know what an assistant director does? Among other things, an assistant director signs everybody in and signs everybody out. In other words, whatever the 15 hours is, if it's a 15-hour day, it's a 17-hour day for the AD. Because he's got to be there before everybody else, and he's got to be there after everybody else. So these things, although they're separate guilds and separate areas of jurisdiction, they ripple. A 15-hour day doesn't mean anything to the Writers Guild. It means something to the director because he's got to have his team there, which is the ADs. The actors, I don't think it means as much because most of them are getting paid, a deal. But and remember that this turnaround and this how long is the day applies to second units, applies to effects units, applies to the people in the green suits with the little red ping pong balls units. And all of those units have assistant directors. They have to. So
are the ADs happy with this one or not happy?
I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody directly, but they'll be happy to get anything that limits the days because right now they're the most abused, like I say, because they have to be first on, last off.
Well, sounds like 15 hours is going to be the cutoff for a lot of productions.
Well, maybe, and that's unfortunately an improvement over what happens sometimes now.
Right.
But that big deal about turnaround and about how many you can do in a row like that, that's a big deal. And by the way, the places where it is most likely to have those extra long days on top of extra long days, it's in all those areas where the infrastructure is not quite on the ground the same way it is in Hollywood. Atlanta included. They work longer days because, hey, if they're already there because it's a deal on the supplements, on the government incentives, they want to get as many things done there as they can. And I will remind everybody, finally, everybody who listens to our channels knows about how the numbers on these incentive supplements come to us to tell us really how much they spent in England, because they have to, because under their rules, it has to be publicly reported. And that's how we find out that the budget they told us a certain movie had was actually $100 million more than it was. But guess what? No such public reporting exists in this country.
But I'll say this. If you out there are an elected official with a mindset that you would like to bring transparency to Hollywood, if you feel a little bit disenfranchised by the way they treat you, if you get back in power, that would be a heck of a way to bring some transparency. Is make it required to show us what these budgets for these productions are and the expenses and all of that. And I think rather quickly we'll find out, and perhaps the unions will find out, that the situation with streaming and the shift to away from theater, away from cinemas, away from broadcast TV, that none of this is going swimmingly, might spook a few people. We're just saying.
And everything that Marta Every said about the business model and the cost of borrowing money.
You know what else spooks the entertainment industry? Whenever LW Ghost shows up and starts spouting the facts and explaining how this works. Folks, you can check out LW Ghost with our member-exclusive content all the time. He's also over on That Park Place quite a bit. And, Lou, you have your own show now over on At That Pod Place. We call it T3PO, but it's the Hollywood Backlot with Lou
show,
and you.
And I just show up and get grilled, because I couldn't do it without him, and I don't want to.
Well, you two are great partners, and it's a great joy. Folks, if you want to ask Lou questions yourselves, it's on Sundays, and Lou is available for you to ask questions. 2 p.m. Sundays, that's Eastern time.
Usually live, this week on tape because I've got somewhere else to be. But
it's the holidays. It's the holidays. Yeah. Lou will be soaking in the sun and enjoying a nice beverage with a very, very tiny umbrella. Folks, you can help be our very, very tiny umbrella. Tell YouTube to keep the rain away simply by clicking the like button, share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms, it's the notification bell. Drop a comment right on down below. Let us know your thoughts. And folks, we want to thank you again for your gigantic, ginormous, enormous support of Vacation Radio. now reaching that milestone that tells YouTube to send it out to everybody, not just those who are interested in our little corner of the internet. Thank you, folks, for being the electricity. Thank you for your true energy that drives everything we do. You are the success every single day. All right, folks, until we see you again, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Yeah, I am so excited for Independence Day. You can taste the liberty and drink in all that 4th of July freedom.
Why? You're not an American, and you don't live in America. Not to mention, you're a troll, and they're from Norway.
Wait, you're saying that trolls can't have the spirit of America? How do you explain Leslie Headland? That'd also be like saying the Acolyte isn't Star Wars.
Well, I guess it's not bad to not be American and wish for that kind of freedom. But please, don't compare this situation to the Acolyte and it being Star Wars. Nothing's that bad.
Well, gosh darn it. You've given me something new to aim for.